Okay. Good morning, Excellencies, dear colleagues. It's great to have you all today with us for the e-participation day. I hope you had this early morning and this change of the weather. You had your coffee, check your tweets, access Facebook, and whatever our early morning rituals that we start the day with. My name is Jovan. I'm director of DiploFoundation, and we are one of the partners in organizing this event. You will hear later on about other partners represented at this opening session. The e-participation day is a part of the series of e-diplomacy days. We started the first e-diplomacy day in November last year, focusing on mapping e-diplomacy field. We had the second e-diplomacy day on online learning, which had a different architecture, mainly with online access. And today we are here focusing on e-participation. Besides us here who can take advantage of in-situ events, we will have people accessing remotely with quite a few registrations, 80 registrations. We'll see how many will show up for the online event as well. The plan is that we start with the opening session with the remarks from the co-organizers and our colleagues. Later on, move into the discussion on the format of the event. There will be some innovations. We will hear later on from my colleague Pete Cranston, which will try to do interplay between in-situ and online events. Therefore, we will do in a way innovation in the method how the events are organized to make this bridge between in-situ dynamics here in the room and online dynamics with people accessing it from the Fiji to Venezuela. Today with us we have Ambassador Fred Tanner, Director of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, Ambassador Benedikt Wechsler, the e-envoy of the Swiss Diplomatic Service, and Mr. Olivier Coutau, the head of the International Relations Department of the Canton of Geneva. They will provide a few remarks about the activities which the core partners are taking in the field of e-learning, e-participation, interaction with the online world. And the key underlying theme is how the Geneva-based institutions and Swiss-based institutions can make that bridge between what's going on in this remarkable city, this huge dynamics, many meetings, something like 17,000 meetings annually, and what is going on in online world, how that message can be radiated, various messages in policy fields, in health, trade, internet governance, migration. And we will start first with the opening remark by Ambassador Fred Tanner, Director of Geneva Center for Security Policy, a good friend of Diplo with experience long experience in security field, academic and practical, including Director of the Mediterranean Academy of Diplomatic Studies. And thanks to Ambassador Tanner, the Diplo had a relatively smooth start in the late 90s when we were part of the Mediterranean Academy of Diplomatic Studies.
Thank you, Jovan, and wish you a good morning and welcome to this e-participation day. I'm very happy that the GCSP can be part of this. I think it's an important event. I'm also glad that we have here representatives from partner organizations with Ambassador Wechsler, who I think it's outstanding that Swiss government has taken decision to give e-diplomacy a priority and have somebody like Ambassador Wechsler actually in charge of this. It shows that there's a clear understanding of diplomacy being today very much also virtual, and of course entire international communication and diplomacy depends on understanding of the virtual world. The same, of course, with the Canton of Geneva, Mr. Coutau. I'm very glad that he's here as well. We have long-standing relationships. I'm also glad that we are associated with the permanent mission of Malta. Again, Jovan and I, we have a common past in Malta, and that goes quite a way back. It goes to the 1990s, actually the first part of the 1990s. And Jovan was one of the first who really has been introducing email on a systematic level within the organization, it shows. I mean, it's let's say 1994, 95. That's not very long time ago, but it is. I mean, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was nothing like that.
That was a good time.
And well, but Jovan has been pioneer bringing it in, and he has, of course, ever since been going strong in that field, which has been more and more mainstream. And I think that's certainly an important message. I'm also glad that ITU is associated with this event, Media Vision and the Permanent Mission of Switzerland. What is equally important is, of course, that today the question of e-participation and the entire question of e-instruments are becoming part of our daily life. And I would argue we're just at the beginning. We're just at the beginning of a world which will be more and more virtual, not just privately as we have it now with our instruments we have. I just have been reading a book by a Japanese physicist called, well, he has the unfortunate name his name is Mr. Kaku, and it's called The Future of Physics. And he argues that in the next 30 years, the world will be much more dramatically changing than it changed over the last 30 years. And again, we changed dramatically just over the last 15 years since we were in Malta. And there is, of course, this Moore's principle where the microchip, the ability to store the chip on a surface every 18 months will be cut by half. That means in a few years, microchips will be basically for free, will be used anywhere. And Mr. Kaku argues we will start to live in a virtual world. I mean, already now there are now projects to create intelligent rooms, because you can put these chips into paint. You paint the room and you have intelligent rooms you can use. You live. It's not just a computer anymore. A computer will be outdated, it will be old-fashioned. But you live in a virtual world, and we're getting very closely into that. And I think that's why this day here is very important. I'm also glad that, of course, we can here stress the role of International Geneva. The GCSP has been very much committed to promote International Geneva in peace-building action with the Geneva Peace-Building Platform, in disarmament, with the disarmament platform, and this is actually one of our only so far online courses we have been offering together with Diplo. Is an online course on non-proliferation. So I think we get into that world as well. So I'm very glad to be here, and I will wish you a very successful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. You remind me of great days in Malta, and I just returned yesterday from Malta, and I met a businessman who is now quite a rich person in Malta, who back in 1994, when Fred complained that our telephone bills were very high because I was accessing from Malta Ashay's server. There were a few nodes around the CERN. And then I found that this businessman and convinced him to start the internet service in Malta. And now he's extremely rich person. And I asked him to make some donations for DiploFoundation because of that early. But it was interesting anecdote from the recent ancient history of the internet. I would like to invite Ambassador Wechsler, the envoy of the Swiss diplomatic service and a pioneer in this field, who is trying to bridge that two professional cultures of the internet and traditional diplomacy, which is in many diplomatic services worldwide a challenging task and also a very innovative task. We will hear throughout the day more on the Swiss experience in this field, but we will start now with your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Jovan. It's always a privilege to be the second speaker, then I don't have to repeat all the thanks and to all other sponsors, which you did so nice, Fred. Just one other remark. I'm very proud of this partnership with Malta, because, you know, like Switzerland is a very landlocked country and we always dreamt of having a sea around us. So this is really the perfect match we could find. I've seen some intellectuals in the 70s who wanted to tear down the Alps in order to have a view on the Mediterranean Sea. So, but I think it's like the message of internet world. You have to join the forces and find the right partners. Then you get even such utopias. My son is 14 years old, and he told me once, I really would like to live in times where groundbreaking changes are taking place. My wife and we started to laugh and say, hey, you're in the midst of it. And just interesting to see how these people, young people, they grow and live with it without being conscious of it as we are getting older and we see what's changing. But for them, it's just natural. I think that I found that very, very stimulating, and also something to be more relaxed on how to deal with it, because when you see young people working with these tools, it's so nice how they use the potential, and I'm not afraid. Firstly, we think of potential dangers or problems that come with these new tools or technologies. I think that's an approach also we should more take up ourselves. I just came back from a 2-week trip in the US to Silicon Valley. Met a lot of people at Facebook, Berkeley University, City of San Francisco, and it was really an eye-opener for me how this virtual reality, what we sometimes think of a bit of science fiction or maybe coming out of a Hollywood movie, which is just daily life there. And the city of San Francisco is mostly communicating via Facebook tools, or traffic informations are being spread very easily by Twitter, and they're not using more people. They retrain their people and use these new medias and do a lot also to create access for people to these new tools. And I think it's really for me it was an eye opener that this is not just some fancy people in Silicon Valley who dream of a new world, but this is already reality and will become more and more reality. I told them then a nice story about the 19th century coming from old Europe about the trains, because Bern has the, I don't want to make a joke about Geneva, but Bern has the oldest international organization, I think, of the world, which is the International Railway Association. And when you compare these times when the trains, the railways came up, everybody was building railways, and all of a sudden they felt, hey, we have to connect these trains. When I want to change train or when I have to change a wagon, we need maybe a common tool to loosen a screw. So what they did, one of their first things to do was they made a norm for a key, how they can change wheels of a wagon, and that became the Clé de Berne, which still exists. When you can look it up on Wikipedia, the Clé de Berne, and it was one of the measures taken by these international organizations to make cooperation between these different railway systems possible. And I think that's also a phase that we are entering now these days. Maybe a lot of people thought, internet is for crazy young people, but now it's coming into politics, it's coming into business. As soon as it comes into business, it becomes interest. As soon as you have interests, you will have conflict of interest, and then again is coming the opportunity or the need probably for diplomacy to find ways of a solution for conflicting interests. And I think we're in the midst of that process, but we don't have yet the tools in diplomacy or multilateral organizations to deal with it. And in the 19th century, they just created this International Railway Association, and probably today for this world is probably not the right answer, and we'll have to find new answers institutionally for the governance of that world. And I think, as has been mentioned already, the UN has to have a vital role in that. And Geneva, with all its expertise and all existing organizations, is probably the best place also to start these discussions and creating new structures, new ideas, how to develop step by step also a governance of this internet world. I think social media, e-diplomacy brings terrific new resources also for diplomacy and multilateral cooperation. In the United States, there were two main things that everybody was talking about. The one thing was big data, open data, and the other thing is that everything is going mobile. And actually, I see again that Jovan, with your program, you're on the right track with the program of today, because we touch on all these issues. And just mentioning, I think Geneva, with all the expertise and know-how we have here, it is probably the biggest big data place, one of the biggest big data places on earth, and we should use that. You can use it for health, you can use it for trade, and so on. There was an interesting story told I went also to see people at Brookings Institution. They had developed a tool for fishermen in India, and they always had a problem that the communication between the different ports was poor. So it happened that in one port they had an abundance of a certain fish, whereas 200 kilometers down the shore they had not enough of that fish. So, but the fishermen didn't know to go to which port. But now they had an information system that they knew, oh, there's less of that sort of fish, so I'll go to that port. And they really made a study that the prices for the fish have become more reliable for the fishermen, and the market for the consumer has been more predictable too, because they were not anymore just delivered at the mercy of the fishermen who came with more or less fish. So an extremely simple method to improve a market, the workings of a market, not only for the producer but also for the consumer. Another example is in the area of mobile applications. There will be more and more mobile applications in the future. I mean, I'm always today surprised that there are not more accidents on the sidewalks, because everybody's walking like this with the iPhone or another smartphone. But I'm sure they will have a bump-in app soon, so that it gives you should go to left or right, otherwise you bump into another person. But anyway, the Mozilla Foundation, Mozilla company, they are working now on a new operating system for mobile applications, which will be much cheaper and easier to steer and to develop as the existing iOS or Android system, which will make it much more easier to develop applications in the developing world, where you maybe don't dispose of the latest iPhone model. So again, there are also great new resources and potentials for diplomacy in a way, but also for international cooperation. So in conclusion, I think we will still need trains today, but even trains like the Swiss Federal Railway System is using social media extremely efficiently and intensively. I'm as convinced that we still need and will need even more diplomacy in the future, and we will need the UN, and the UN will need to embrace these new technologies to improve its work, and states will need to use it in order to better defend their interests, as they did, and also when they contribute in a multilateral system, also to contribute better to a efficient international system. So I'm really looking forward also to the discussions of today, because where you can really convince people why the social media is really useful, or this internet and e-participation is with concrete projects. And all I see also on the list here are very often concrete projects where you can convince certainly donors, but also other involved experts that there is a need to do more in that field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benedikt, for starting this lovely tapestry by having threads from history, Silicon Valley, family experience with your son, and I think it is basically the story that all of us have to start knitting in a way, combining experience, our personal experience, but also experience of humanity, what we can learn from history, and how we can look forward towards these new developments. You indicated that Geneva, and I think this is the first innovation into innovative element in our discussion today, is one of the major open data and big data centers. It is definitely true with international organizations and all setups that exist in Geneva, and we'll be hearing throughout the day. But this good introduction for our next speaker, Mr. Olivier Coutau from the Geneva Canton, and coordinator and the head of the few projects aimed at linking Geneva International, what's going on in Geneva International with the social media world and broader online communities. Olivier.
Thank you, Jovan. Thank you very much for the invitation. We are proud and happy to be associated with today's event. Jovan, the other day when you came to see me, you were very efficient in explaining me what I was trying to explain you about my work for international organizations. I was saying that we work both to improve the material and non-material working conditions of international organizations. We help them to have the necessary buildings, necessary conference facilities on the material side, and we also help them to have the necessary training, the necessary education to train the diplomats of tomorrow. And you summarize very efficiently my activity by saying that, okay, you deal with the hardware and the software. Now I'm much better explaining to the others what I try to do. We do the hardware and the software for the international organization. So today's event, I think, is in the software dimension, and we're happy to support your effort to develop a debate and knowledge about e-diplomacy and e-participation. Not only it helps mission, international organizations, and NGOs to know each other better and to work better together, but I think also that you assist them in better managing the information in the age of internet. In my position, I'm especially interested in the information made available to the general public by international organizations. And I was yesterday evening at a conference by Pascal Lamy about global governance, and he said that the main challenge nowadays of global governance is legitimacy. And he was saying that to obtain legitimacy, we need global citizens. I think that we could add to obtain global citizens, we need information about global issues. I read last week an article written by somebody who is in the room, by the way, pointing out that there are less and less journalists attending the press briefings at the Palais des Nations. I'm not completely sure that there are really less journalists attending these briefings, but I'm sure that press briefings nowadays are not the only way to deliver information about what's going on inside international organizations to the general public. And to give you just one example, which is the news of the day, the newsletters that we send every day from my office to all those interested in what's going on in La Genève Internationale as a whole. We select news and analysis about La Genève Internationale exclusively from the internet. And I can guarantee you that it's not difficult at all to find the information. There are plenty of information. Where it requires maybe a bit more skills is when it comes to select information and to distribute, to disseminate it properly. So I think that at the end of the day, the challenge, or part of the challenge, is probably information management. And I hope that this e-participation day will help us all, myself included, to be better information managers.
Thank you, Olivier. If I can continue with analogy software hardware, our experience from the visit to your office was, you know, when you come to the governmental offices, you expect Windows operating system or some closed software. But then after this first meeting, I realized that you are trying to develop your software platform based on open source approach, because you were very responsive to the quite a few ideas and the inclusive approach, including the Twitter project that we'll be hearing later on. We will, Fred, you would like to add a few points, please.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to congratulate Coutau for this newsletter. I think it's excellent. It really helps us to connect the dots. What's happening in Geneva, that was way overdue that we have that, and this is required reading of all my colleagues here at the center. I just wanted to share one little experience I had yesterday. I was at a conference in Vienna at OSCE. It was quite a large conference. What was new was there were 4 huge screens where Twitter was streamed while the conference took place. And there were, for me, and I see Antoine sitting back there, colleague of mine, what was special was I had the opportunity to be on a panel, and then of course you see the Twitters showing up while you speak, and suddenly, you know, the Twitters really are a great added value, but also hugely disturbing, because I gave a little talk and mentioned conventional disarmament, and then I saw a Twitter coming. Tanner seems to forget there are still 2,000 nuclear weapons in Europe. And I thought, oh my God, I have to do that. And then, you know, another Twitter, they start to go back and forth to become part of the discourse and the dialogue. That was one very interesting for me, personal experience. I think it's the future. I think, again, remote involvement in debates. But also the other thing was, and here again, I look to Antoine, was there is also a bit a dog and pony show now when, for instance, I have been able to join the panel. Suddenly Twitter shows up, and thank you, Antoine. GCSP director will participate in the panel. And then 10 seconds later, there was a Polish colleague, the director of a Polish institute, from the Polish embassy at Twitter. Polish director will participate. And suddenly I have all these Twitters, who's going to be there and comment. I think it's an interesting development, sometimes a bit disturbing, to be frank, but it's enriching, very much enriching. I think actually that's something which will certainly be part of the debate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, for this lovely anecdote. And you see the reason why we put the screen with the speaker this way. Therefore, panelists cannot
see that the panelists
cannot see it, not being disturbed. No, that's those few points from our panelists. They show that one famous saying which appropriate for our discussion today. And Peter reminded me yesterday, John Lennon, is that life is what happens while you are busy making a big plan. When we started preparing plans for this event 2 months ago, well, our main approach was, which is still valid today, to focus on inclusiveness, team participation, open data, making these bridges between the online world and Geneva International. But as you are aware, there were quite a few developments, and I think Benedikt, some of them happened while you were in Silicon Valley, including the question of PRISM. And we cannot ignore these developments. They're part of the everyday discourse, and we will be reflecting throughout the day on the relevance of the latest developments on the question of e-diplomacy and e-participation, because they're important for the concept of big data, open data, data mining, and other issues. And these issues are around the question whether we store a data, should we start storing data in our national cloud, or regional, or global, these issues are coming faster than I thought. I've been involved in internet governance for the last 10 years, but you can see acceleration of the awareness of the importance of internet policy issues. Now, I would like to invite my colleague Pete Cranston, who was enjoying till a few days ago lovely holiday in Tuscany, and then we sent him an email trying to nudge him to join us for the e-participation day. It seems that we were persuasive, and Pete is with us today. Pete, for those of you who are in the e-circles, he's one of the well-known trainer in social media e-participation, and person who manages to bridge traditional issues in the field of participation, governance, and novelty of the internet. And he will be master of ceremony today. He will be trying to bridge this, what's going on online. By the way, if you have some comments from our remote participation, including one that could be difficult, please let us know. And I would like to invite Pete to explain us how we are going to navigate throughout the day. Pete.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm Pete Cranston. I really enjoy working with Diplo because there's always a bit of an edge. So this is an event, and yes, people are tweeting already. We've already got a couple of questions. And we're going to be broadcasting, so far not so different, but we're also going to have remote participants coming in during the day. Well, that's not you either, but we're doing it all on a budget. Because Diplo is a small to medium-sized organization. We work with NGOs and governments around the world who don't necessarily have the capacity to build multi-million e-presence video suites. So we're always experimenting with different tools. We've been playing with Google Hangouts. We're using WebEx today. Base Ambassador Tanner's comments, we toyed with having a Twitter wall because I really enjoy them. But for two reasons, we decided not to have a Twitter wall, but we can change. This is your meeting. We can change it. If you want a Twitter wall, we'll have a Twitter wall and we'll put it up. What we've got on this screen is what's being visible through WebEx, a remote conferencing system. For a number of reasons, we've decided not to use Google Hangout this time. And there will be chat. You can see down at the bottom of the window, there'll be chat going on. So what we're going to be trying to do, and my main task, is to link those who are outside the room with those who are in the room. And as you know, we've got 3 panels during the day, and I'll go over the agenda in a moment. And in each of those, we expect there to be some different remote participants. And so what I'm going to be trying to do is to enable you to have a conversation with them and for them to have a conversation with you. There's already Twitter going on. I'll read out in a moment a couple of questions that have come through Twitter, which we can put to the first panel. And if you are going to tweet, it's #ePart13. It's up there, and it's up there. And before we go on, though, you've been sitting calmly for the last 50 minutes. You need to move around a bit. How many of you are actually tweeting from here? We're asking the same question as a poll to the remote participants. We'll get a picture. Sorry, can you keep your hand up? Those of you tweeting from here. So this is also for the panelists, so you're aware. Even though you can't see Twitter, you might want to keep it open on your desktop or on your phone while you're talking so you can see what people are saying about you. How many people are here on Facebook? Yeah, so raise your hands higher. Yeah, so we're now over 50%. I mean, you'd expect that. It's a social media e-engagement kind of platform. It wasn't the case 5 years ago. What about LinkedIn? Yeah, professional organization, even more on LinkedIn. So actually most people are on LinkedIn. To my enormous surprise, I think LinkedIn's getting interesting finally. For a long time it wasn't. It's simply where you put your CV if you're a consultant like me. What about any other social media? What else are people on? What else are people using today so we can track it? I mean, if you're going to use a tag in Flickr, if you're going to use a tag in any videos and stuff, use ePart13. Any other interesting platforms? Any other different to European platforms? Anyone using Pinterest? You're putting stuff on Pinterest, Instagram, WhatsApp? Yeah, so we're a pretty savvy audience here. We'll tell you when we get the results from the poll later on during the day who comes up from the remote participants. For the event itself, have you all got a program? Have you all seen the program? Just so you're aware of it. So in a moment there will be a panel starting. Now this one, just to go against everything I said, is all people in the room. so that there are 3 participants here in the room, but we'll also be broadcasting out remote participants. And as you come to the table, I'll suggest for each of the panels, we've put one overarching question. You know, what's the kind of core we want to get out of this to help us gather the story and tell it afterwards. But I'll also give you a couple of questions coming from Twitter. Then we have lunch between 11:50 and 1 o'clock. We want to do some interviews at lunch. You know, this is social media. We're going to go around with cameras and our mobile phones. We're going to catch you in corners and ask you for 90 seconds of your reactions to this and your feelings about that. And we may or may not ask you for your reactions about NSA and PRISM. And if you don't want to answer that, please tell us. We fully appreciate people come from organizations where that's sometimes difficult to talk. After lunch at 1 o'clock, we have the first of the panels that involves 2 remote participants. So that's on remote participation in international organizations. And then we have 3 workshops, 3 breakout sessions. One's going to be run by Geneva International on Twitter, international organizations. So for those of you who want to spend some time chatting around Twitter and how to make it more effective. Tim Davis is going to be talking about OpenData. Tim will introduce himself. And then finally, in this room, Jovan is going to be talking, again, this is John Lennon quote. Jovan's original frame was e-politeness and how to operate effectively as a diplomat within these circles. Is e-politeness actually the right thing to be talking about right now? So in the space where we might have a more serious and deeper conversation about the NSA and PRISM and diplomatic immunities and freedoms and all of that, we'll be doing that here between 2:15 and 3:15. Jovan will be leading that. That is the one that will be broadcast through WebEx, and we'll be encouraging remote participants to come into that. Then there's a coffee break, and then at 3:30 there's a final session. 2 remote participants from UNDP and Tim Davis again on open government, open data, citizen engagement. Does it equal more transparency? What's its impact on international organizations? To introduce my colleagues, the pressured man here, Arvin, is managing the remote participants, the video. We have Anastasia working with him, supporting him. We have Elisa here, who's engaging as the remote moderator. Don't interrupt us. Don't ask us any questions. I've got cards here. We've got cards out on the walls there. We've also got a graffiti wall at the back. And one of the advantages of being a remote participant is that either via Twitter or via the chat, you can actually have a conversation. It's quite hard in the room. Not everybody can ask questions. So if you have questions or reflections or comments, or you want to draw a cartoon, add them during the day and we'll photograph them and feed them back out again. So we're going to try and have other kind of conversations in here, as well as conversations with the remote participants. I think that's all my introductory remarks. Oh, one final thing, photographs. We'll be taking photographs during the day. The default is they're publishable. In other words, that you will find them on Flickr, you will find them in blogs, you will find them in a variety of spaces. If you don't want them published or you want them photoshopped, come and see us. And we'll arrange to have them a little bit tidied up before we go online. So otherwise, I mean, seriously, if some people aren't comfortable about the number of photographs that circulate, the default in the room is that we will be publishing photographs. We haven't talked to you about, maybe we should after lunch, particularly in that session, about what kind of conventions we have for reporting in and out of the room. But we'll perhaps raise that one, the one after lunch. Yeah, I mean, we're assuming that people are tweeting out from this room, and everyone's quite comfortable with that. Yeah, okay. Any other comments from the other moderators? From Jovan? You have to come to the microphone, otherwise they can't hear you. No, they can't hear you over there otherwise.
Well, that's better. The default is that that's open and free communication, and then, but if the panelists would like to have it Chatham House rule, he or she should indicate that. That's the modus operandi. In that way, we can reserve discussion if particular panelists would like to keep it within this room and within the virtual room, that we cannot disconnect online participants. Good.